The Wild West defined a time and shaped a country. But the West never left. The endless plains of northern Texas were once known as the Comanche of the Comanche people. Here, two great cultures clashed and changed the fates of a nation and a people.
Our own insider name for each other is Numina. Numina, and translates roughly to the people. Comanches, we are descendants of an empire people. The height of that being in the 17th, 18th, early 19th centuries, where we have tens of thousands of Comanche people.
After the introduction of horses, the Comanche migrated from Wyoming and moved across Nebraska, Colorado, Kansas, and New Mexico, then finally settled in what is now Texas and Oklahoma. On the plains, they became the greatest horse people on the continent. At their peak, the combined Comanche were estimated at over 40,000 people. Their nomadic bands ranged up to 800 miles across a military and trade empire built on horseback.
The Comancheria is historically known as roughly 250,000 square miles. It goes from Durango, Mexico to Durango, Colorado. It goes across so much of Texas, Oklahoma, on into Kansas. It is this huge swath of land of where we were known to trade, to raid, to take captives, to engage in warfare, to engage in alliances, to do all those things that I think pretty much all humans are known to have done throughout the history of time.
Comanche became the lords of the plains by mastering horses. A warrior could have 100 or 200 mounts. A chief could have more than 1,000. Horses provided strength and wealth, but most importantly, allowed them to dominate large herds of the most important commodity on the plains, the buffalo.
Comanches were good on horses, but they were dependent on the buffalo. They used the buffalo for everything. It was part of their life.
But a great threat to the Comanche way of life was on the horizon. It led to the longest and most brutal war between Americans and a single Indian tribe, and the rise of a singular figure in American history. In Texas today, the legacy of this warrior, leader, and statesman lives on. The last chief of the Comanche, Quanah Parker.
But out with the 90th garrison Tamacara, my great-grandfather was Quanah Parker. An honor to be a descendant from his area.
But anyway, my name is Ronald Parker, and I'm a great-grandson of Quanah Parker.
Quanah Parker was a man of two worlds.
He was raised by his Comanche father, the chief Peyton, who was the Parivo or leader of the Nokani band of Comanches. He's also raised for several years by his Anglo mother, Cynthia Ann Parker. Cynthia Ann's story, she was captured by Comanches in 1836 at the age of 9 and was raised among Comanches. Marries Peyton, has at least 3 children with him, one of whom is Quanah. This is her reality. This is her life. This is who she wants to be with. And then Cynthia Ann, she is so-called rescued by the Texas Rangers years later.
In 1860, Cynthia Ann was captured from her Comanche band by Texas Rangers and taken back to her white relatives.
She always wanted to go back. She always wanted to come home to her children, to her husband, to her Comanche relatives, her family, and that didn't happen.
Despite several attempts to return to her Comanche family, Quanah's mother died without ever seeing her husband or her children again.
I think a part of what Quanah Parker, it's a love story. She grew up amongst the Comanches and loved them enough that she married a chief and had children. And Quanah never forgot her. It's a love story.
By the late 1860s, there were harsh new realities for the once dominant Comanche. Quanah Parker was growing up in a time of constant conflict with the encroaching United States.
For Quanah, it was growing up to become this fierce warrior who would defend his people to the death, would defend his people and his homelands at any cost. And that's what he continued to do, and he soon becomes a leader of his own band.
Parker led hundreds of raids on American settlers and soldiers across Oklahoma and Texas.
Parker was following the legacy of protecting and defending the people and the land.
But Comanche success forced the hand of the U.S. After the Civil War, the reunited states turned its attention back to Western expansion. Under the command of Colonel Ranald Mackenzie, the U.S. Army assembled 3,000 infantry and cavalry to hunt and destroy Indians. And Mackenzie pursued Quanah relentlessly.
Mackenzie used to chase him all over the countryside.
Constant war and the extermination of the buffalo became an existential threat to the Comanche.
The buffalo had been taken away from them, and the horse has been taken away. That was their way of life.
Quanah eventually realizes that, we're outnumbered. The repeating pistol comes out, the long-range rifles come out. The U.S. soldiers and the U.S. cavalry, they have weaponry that we just really weren't able to match. And so come about 1874, 1875, he was at this crossroads.
Quanah saw the writing on the wall and sought to control his destiny.
I don't like the term surrender because I don't think he was surrendered. And when he met Mackenzie, he didn't get off his horse either. Mackenzie looked up at him.
He said, "Our horses are surrendering, but not us. just our horses are going to surrender." The one thing that has sustained our Comanche people is the humor. To be able to laugh when things are tough and to keep it going.
He was quick to adapt to things, and that's why they looked at him as being the principal chief.
Once nomadic horse lords of the plains, surrender meant accepting life on a reservation and dependence on government rations to survive. But Quanah continued to lead and flourish even during these shattering experiences for the Comanche.
He led us into that new century. He had vision. He had a good heart.
Instead of just withering into history, he continues and he flourishes. He sees opportunities. He sees this way to take this land that was already part of our homelands and now being on this reservation, and he sees an economic opportunity and starts actually charging some of his white rancher friends that he's starting to get to know to start grazing their cattle. He becomes a stockholder and co-owner in the Quanah, Acme, and Pacific Railroad, to where even his name, of course, is the lead name in this railroad.
His success wasn't only financial, it was political too.
He becomes a judge in later years, overseeing all Indian court system. He went to Washington, D.C. He became friends with President Roosevelt. He's doing this groundbreaking work repeatedly of making sure that we never stop being Comanche. That yes, we're becoming American, and he's embracing that, but he also is making sure that we never stop being Comanche.
Quanah's embrace of the modern world even extended to the medium of film.
So to see Quanah Parker, to see my great-great-great-grandfather on camera, Quanah Parker essentially playing a version of Quanah Parker. That's his horse that he's riding there. That's his stagecoach that shows up. That's him in close-up after close-up shot. These are our ancestors showing up in silent films, in motion. We can see how he rides a horse. We see how he carries himself, how he struts, how he moves about. And I'd humbly like to think that he's already envisioning future generations like myself, like my children, being able to see this, to see him. And there are no words that can fully capture what it truly means.
Those future generations continue to gather yearly at the town that bears his name.
I think he was a leader of men. To me, he was more concerned about the population than himself. What can we do? He was a visionary. He had to look in the future to see, what can I do to help our people?
Quanah Parker was a man of two worlds. I want people to remember that. He really did a great job of building that gap between what he was, a warrior, and coming into this new way of life and helping us get where we are today.